Anabolic Steroids 101 for doctors. My friend, back up again, Dr. Brett Nolan, who we all know we've seen before here on the channel. He's a cardiologist and a lipidologist, and he's taught me mostly everything I know about the extreme world of cardiovascular disease, from the causes, the management, the treatments, the current medications, really what to do, and then, of course, the lipid side. Brett, welcome, Dr. Nolan.
Hey, thanks, Tom, so much. This is always, an enormous pleasure of mine. It's great to see you again. You're looking well. And, this topic I'm really excited about, actually, because it's fascinating. You in the world that you live in, and the men, mostly men that you help, and some of them that I've seen, people using performance-enhancing drugs, anabolic steroids, that, I'm sympathetic to, and I see people using them, and I sort of had to take a step back and realize that I don't know enough about these things, and I'm probably even a step further than most, regular practitioners out there, where you have something that's super common that a lot of people are using, and I don't know enough to be able to help people with it. So I'm really excited about this topic and sort of getting some more knowledge out of you.
So thank you so much, Dr. Nolan. So how it started, guys, Dr. Nolan and I, Brett, and my friend Brett, we go back and forth on texting. We share some patients, and, we talk, and I always ask him, hey, Brett, you ready to do a new, and I wanted to ask him to do a video on biohacking your heart. And then kind of what came up was he texted me and he said, Tom, do you really have anything more where I could learn more about the steroids? And I thought, wait a minute, this is a great opportunity for me to show doctors, because here you are as really an advanced internist. I know your training in the beginning was not internal medicine, but you're really in the world of internal medicine, cardiology, and
Right.
subspecialty. You're a subspecialist even in lipidology, and so many people don't know. But you don't have a history educationally or personally of using PEDs. So,
Correct.
so many doctors don't. And then now you have this vacuum filled over 20 years from the anti-aging wellness world. And again, that's not a criticism on them. That's showing that the traditional physicians like you need to be educated. And here you are coming, because this whole world now is moving so fast where everyone, quote unquote, not everyone, but so many people are on PEDs and steroids. And what are they in women? And is it anti-aging? What's the difference between testosterone for a man versus a PED? And what are PEDs? What is Dianabol? What are SARMs? And what are peptides? Peptides to me and you are just proteins. I mean, like, what is it? Okay. So I put together a very succinct, believe it or not, on PEDs for a doctor or for anyone. But guys out there on my channel, please give comments. Open it up, because I start something like this with a topic, and then everyone comes because of your comments. They look at your comments. Bring your doctors, bring your nurse practitioners, bring your mom and dad, bring anyone from a perspective of understanding what are PEDs. Here's the beginning. PEDs started to be used, and for all you guys that are really advanced, please don't hang up on some of the technical details that, no, equipoise was around. So we have three epochs. We have starting in the 60s, I see it, 60s up until the 90s, so during the 80s. PEDs, believe it or not, were legal, Dr. Nolan. Did you know anabolic steroids were legal and prescribed by physicians?
No, I knew they were used for like kids with growth problems, etc., but I wasn't aware of general use.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is fact checkable, and I'm not against Arnold. We all like Arnold. There's some politics in there, of course, but so Arnold Schwarzenegger has stated over and over, even recently, that when he did steroids back in the 70s and 80s, they were prescribed by physicians. Now, let's talk about, oh, yeah, up until 1990, where the government in America passed a law called the Anabolic Steroid Control Act of 1990.
Completely unaware.
So that's when anabolic, and now I'm going to go into all the PEDs too, guys, but we have to start with the standard steroids. Okay. This is when anabolic androgenic steroids, by which there are many, maybe even today. Now, back in the day, back in the 70s and the 80s, guys like Arnold and doctors all over different areas, districts. So, you're talking LA and New York. There was always a doctor, that was known for, and he wasn't a bad doctor, but sometimes he didn't know what he was doing because we didn't have a perspective on the damage. And they started to see it. Obviously, they started to see it in the 70s, 80s, into that late 80s. And then Ben Johnson, this is for Rick Collins, legal muscle attorney Rick Collins. Yes, Rick, I'm going to make you proud. It was because not of harm for patients, it was because of heads and cheating in the Olympics. Ben Johnson got busted. Did you know about that? No.
I mean, I know the Ben Johnson story, but I didn't know that sort of sparked it all.
It's because of Ben Johnson, and I don't know about as much as this legal side as Attorney Collins, but there was other things going on, I believe, with MLB, probably NFL. Okay.
Right.
And it was kind of ratcheting up. And then the bodybuilders were using it for 20 years at this point. Bodybuilders were using steroids in the 60s. 70s, 80s, it was building up. And I remember, I'm 60, so I remember I was heavily weightlifting in the early 80s, and we had steroids around us. They were all real, and they were falling off the back of the truck, and you had to know someone. We didn't have steroids through social media. So, DM me and all this. And it was certainly an underground. Now, let's talk about the drugs. So from the 60s into the 70s and 80s, it was Arnold's time, classic bodybuilding. They were using steroids for cycles, doctor, and they would try to stay on for maybe 6 to 12 weeks because they knew they were going to get shut down. Number one, their hypothalamus pituitary gonad axis was going to get shut down. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Endocrinology kind of 101. So, and because the testicles would shut off, and their sex drive typically would go very high when they're on. And then they just knew that they didn't want to be shut down and on testosterone and steroids for life. Now, these are men in their 20s and 30s, okay, even younger, but typically back in the day, I remember, because I was one of them, we knew not to do steroids until, max out your natural gains. Max, well, you don't need it, kid. Your balls are working. So train hard until about 21, 23. And that's when I started doing steroids. And it was like, I got my gains. I'm big as hell. I'm strong as hell. Boom, time to go to the next step. Did you know that, doctor? You didn't realize.
No, and I have a question to ask you. So is the only reason that people do a cycle is to try and let their own endocrine system kind of play catch up? Is that the only reason?
100% in the beginning, but also, doctor, what comes into play is the inherent man, the inherent bodybuilder, or these aren't these are just men that are, and women now, that are using it for gain. If you think you're going to get some great muscles and training with natural protein and creatine and train hard, eat great, yeah, based on your genetics, absolutely. But steroids work like a charm. And did you know that back in the 80s, the medical establishment said repeatedly that they're not sure steroids work for muscle building?
Okay.
This is where the embarrassment, and where doctors started, traditional physicians were ridiculed in my eyes, because Have you seen Arnold? Like, have you seen Lou Ferrigno?
Right,
Steroid
right,
stuff. There's no evidence. There's no, imagine us. There's no randomized, prospective, double-blinded, and of course there wasn't. But how much anecdotal more do
right.
you need? How much anecdotal evidence? And then, but men knew that they're going to get shut down. And they also, again, there's these side effects. They're losing their hair. They're puffy. They're irritated. Maybe we're not going to go into roid rage. That is today, in my opinion, the most complex, esoteric, subjective side effect of steroids is you're an asshole on steroids. That's what roid rage, and some men are sweethearts, and they get so defensive on that roid rage thing. So, but they knew that they knew, but of course then there's trend, which you'll learn, and so they knew that they got to keep it cycled tight because side effects, being shut down, and they didn't really even inherently know back in the 60s and 70s about the heart disease. Doctors were prescribed. We didn't really know. I mean, I guess
Right.
sooner or later we saw the hypertension and we started putting it all together. But when you're young, you have so much health reserve, nothing's going to kill you.
Right.
So we move through that area, and let me talk about the drugs that you need to know from Steroid 101 back in the day. They were basic steroids. There's 3 classes of steroids, okay, chemically. There's testosterone derived, there's NOR19 derived, then there's DHT derived steroids. Dr. Nolan, that's it. And there's hundreds of formulations. Hundreds. Now, did you know that? Did you know the 3 three?
No,
Yeah,
no,
that's
I
okay.
didn't. No clue.
And guys, here is a cardiologist and a lipidologist, and in my opinion, legitimately one of the top in the world. He doesn't have the time. You can't know everything. So you have to educate. I learned this stuff in the streets because I'm a steroid user over 30 years, guys, and I'm an internal medicine doctor. And endocrinology doctors, some of them know this stuff more than he would because he's a cardiologist, but a lot of them don't. But I don't want to ridicule them. You can't know everything. I sometimes feel like I don't know all the new SARMS and the new PEDs. When patients throw them at me, I'm like, give me a break. I don't really know what that is. Let me research it. So don't ridicule me. I'm a doctor. I'm busy with basic steroids still to my day. So
And
here are the
Tom, I have to
steroids.
say, I love not knowing stuff. I love finding out I don't know stuff because that's how you learn. That's the exciting
Albert
part, right?
Einstein. What a man. Albert Einstein, when he was a kid, he had learning disabilities, obviously on the spectrum to some degree,
Right.
and he really had some learning issues. If you look at his history,
Right.
couldn't speak till the age of 4 or 5. I mean, that's not normal. And
Right.
and then Albert Einstein said, in the end, he said he feels like he knows nothing, and he wasn't being a wise guy because when you look at this universe, like behind you, you
Right.
you look up at the sky. When I look up at night and I see the sky, I say, man, I'm just so insignificant.
Right.
So
The
so
more granular, the more grains, right?
wow.
You
So let's go to the steroids. And thank you guys, and thank you, Dr. Nolan, for letting me spew a bit. So let's go into the drugs in the 70s, the 60s, 70s, 90s. It was the 3 class drugs: testosterone esters, propionate. These are injectable: propionate, cypionate, and nanthate, and something in Europe called Sustanon 250. You'll see it today. Now we have something. Then at that time you have decadoraboline, all legal in America. Decadoraboline, NOR19 drug, Dianabol, breakfast of champions. Now we have these are injections. Now we have orals, Dianabol, Anadrol, otherwise known as A-bombs. A-bombs. I mean, you didn't know this. These are massive drugs that work like a charm. Anavar, Anadrol, equipoise. Then we start breaking into that time period into the veterinarian steroids.
Okay.
They're vet drug, and it says on the thing when you look at the box, it says for horses, dogs, and cats. Winstrol works like a charm. Massive. You'll be when you see these bodies. That's Tren, Winstrol, equipoise. On top of testosterone, you have to learn it today, sir. This is your first 101, doctor, for all you
This is awesome.
doctors.
Wait,
This
so
is just
I have a question to ask you. Those three classes that you spoke about, I think I have an intrinsic understanding of how testosterone gives you gains and what have you. Broadly, how do those other two classes do it differently or the same or what have you?
here's what they did. This science, Dr. Nolan, started legitimately in the late 1920s into the 1930s when scientists in Europe, 1930s, really started to understand the chemical structure of testosterone.
Okay.
So anabolic androgenic steroids fundamentally are all based on the chemical structure of natural androgen that comes from our testicles called testosterone. They
Okay.
realized, but when they started to synthesize, imagine without computers, imagine without analyzers, these guys tasted everything. That's how they got sick back in the 1880s and the it was, that, right? Remember
Right.
they had to look at litmus and they were tasting things, and
Sure.
that's alkalinic, it's acid. How do they do this? I don't know. So you look at there's three of these guys, and I forgot the name, but if you fact check anabolic steroid testosterone discovery history, three scientists, they're basically, in Germany and Holland and stuff, and in that part of Europe. So they formulated testosterone. They started to go to work right away. They realized it was the male hormone. In the Greek, testosterone means something like men, or in Latin or something. So when you look at this, they realized that the granular form of just powder testosterone orally dissipates. So they had to and they started realizing in the anabolic steroid, I get goosebumps, history timetable is 1940s into the 1960s. Dr. Nolan, did you know that's it? Into the 70s, maybe. Did you know from the 40s into the 60s was the biggest industrial time of making anabolic steroids? Remember, they weren't juice. They saw muscle building as good, as helpful. A lot of drugs were utilized for production of red blood cell. If you're anemic, not to mention if you have end stage, and we've had kidney disease for as long as as long as mammals and mammifera, we've had kidney disease. The anemia of chronic kidney disease, they realized that androgens cause erythrocytosis. Great, let's use it. Okay, they also realized there's healing properties. There's anabolism, anabolic androgenic. So androgenicity, male secondary sex characteristics, versus anabolic, which is muscle building. Not a bad thing. Coming out of surgery, they were utilized by the FDA. You could see this, Anavar for burns, still today for people that are cachectic. And then we see with AIDS, and with Anadrol was run for many trials for AIDS patients. It's just so toxic. It just wasn't worth it, the risk benefit. So when you look at steroids for post-surgical recovery, cachexia, and it was also utilized for metastatic breast cancer because
that's fascinating.
Right, like tamoxifen. Tamoxifen is a SERM, selective estrogen receptor modulator. So these steroids. So what it's doing is it's when you have breast cancer, mainly for women, right? 99% women. If they have estrogen positive receptors, this medicine will attach onto receptor and block it, and it has effects. I'm not an oncologist. It will have effects for diminishing the growth of that, right? It blocks it. Now,
that makes sense.
Anabolic androgenic steroids, it's the same thing. And we have Proviron, we have Masteron, there are hundreds. This is fascinating, but the bodybuilders and people, not just bodybuilders, realized, oh yeah, man. So, beyond the protein, so those are the drugs in the 60s, 70s, and into right up to 1990. It was the old school stuff. I want you to know, just standard testosterone, but more typically than is used for TRT. You see, but the same stuff you see, Cypionate, great anabolic steroid. When some of these guys take, back in the day, Sustanon 250s, 1 milliliter of 250. It's 4 esters, two quick and moderate, and 2 a little bit slower acting. So the idea was you inject it and it goes up. You don't have to wait, and the dynamics. It's all pharmacology now, right? So the half-life and the peak to action and all this kind of stuff with someone's chemical fingerprint. And this is my life today from my medical practice. So you have propionate, short acting. You have enanthate and cypionate, moderate acting, half-lives of about a week, 7 to 8 days half-life. And then you have Sustanon 250, which is not the same, but they're 4 esters. We don't have it in America because the guys who were making money, I think Pfizer initially, I'm not against Pfizer, but all these different companies, they were basically pushing out. They didn't want any more steroids because they were making a lot of money on cypionate and enanthate, Desiril. This is a lot of politics. So that's the beginning, still till today. And then the oral steroids. Now back in that time period, apart from, we had some esoteric drugs called check drops and halo testing that they were used to make like animals to want to have sex. And I'm not kidding. This is freakish stuff for sex drive. So in the end,
correct.
It makes you horny and angry. So boxers love this stuff. Power lifters, this is the secret stuff where it's like, guys, it doesn't make you aggressive. Don't tell me it doesn't, because it does, and that's good. You like that, you control it, but don't tell me roid rage isn't true. You're an asshole. You're an asshole on steroids. I don't want to see it. But then everyone says tren, which is very, very parabolan for a short time, was for humans. Then it was done. Very short period. Then it's all, even to this day, all for veterinary. It's all horses. And men love these drugs. Did you know that?
And what does it do for horses? The same idea, muscle building,
speed. Oh my God. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. It's just muscle. It's just unbelievable. Anabolism. That's all it is. And then the red blood cells.
I have a question for you. When you're taking testosterone for anabolic purposes, not for replacement, do you saturate testosterone receptors so above a certain threshold there's no need for more, or does it just keep going?
Yes and no. So, but if two answers, yes, you do. But there is a limitation point in theory when you look at the receptor translocating and turning on the nucleus and in synthesizing, increasing protein synthesis, having effects like using steroids for sexual purposes or concentration. There's a saturation down regulation. And then these guys know that's why they stack steroids. They come off and they run different types. Then there's fingerprints. Hey, I respond great to test and equipoise. This guy doesn't. I don't get anything out of that test and decadrobal, and I don't like it. I don't like it too puffy, and I don't like it. So fingerprint. But basically, for the guys that say there is a saturation point and taking too much testosterone for itself, super physiologic is what you're asking. So it doesn't work on building muscle? Bullshit. Why would bodybuilders use 750 milligrams? And when you see 30,000 or 5,000 all the time, most labs they say greater than 1,500 and they can't read it anymore because it's based on the assay, that liquid chromatography dialysis method for the free. This is super complex with Sectron 1 binding globulins, what's carrying, what the machine is reading, what kind of assay it is. This is endocrinology, andrology, more than 101. So basically, if there was a saturation point, If there was, you wouldn't see bodybuilders using up to 1 gram or 3 grams a week. So that answers both questions.
Gotcha.
So I think on muscle, but there is a point where the guy does the steroids. That's why there's coaches and gurus today. There's like little doctors. And again, I know a lot of these guys don't like me, but I take care of the patients. But they're, because you don't know what you're doing on this, and there's no doctor unless the Anabolic Doc. But I don't give, I don't tell guys how much Anadrol and testosterone. It's unethical. But I clean up the problems. So there are coaches, and I'm going to get into that in my timeline here. The point where in the old day, Arnold did it himself, and he had buddies. We all had steroid buddies that would hey, try this, and we typically do this, and it was very simple. Up until 1990, then into the 90s, you have gurus and coaches, full-time job now, and they're not medical doctors at all because they would lose their medical license.
Right.
Did you know that? Did you know there's gurus and coaches today that that's their day job?
Well, I've certainly had been exposed to these guys that have sort of a social media presence, etc., who sell themselves as experts, and I'm sure they have expertise to the level of using and being around people that use, but of course that's not the same thing as actual expertise. So I've certainly seen that.
But I'll tell you this though, and I'm not patting these guys in the back. Have you seen professional bodybuilders? You see those bodies on stage?
Oh, sure. So I don't deny at all that you can become really, really sophisticated with use of these things when there's a 20-year history and getting input from people that are also sophisticated. I get it, but of course, if you don't have the knowledge or the expertise to drill down into potential ill effects or off-target effects that you're not even aware of, you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know.
And here's the deal on this whole thing. We have a video coming out tomorrow. It'll be out already when this is published. It's called The Cockroach Bodybuilders, the Cockroach Theory. So unfortunately, men that do steroids, men that do a lot of steroids, right, like extreme, they actually can get through it because they're like cockroaches. They can, that some people can tolerate much more drugs and alcohol than everyone's got to.
Right.
So I've conceived this.
It's the smoking theory as well, right? So, they talk about people that if you try cigarette smoking and your lungs are very sensitive to it, you cough and you hack and you decide, boy, that's terrible, that's not for me. And it's actually people with sort of super resilient lungs that can actually, tolerate cigarette smoke. And so maybe the data about cigarette smoking is skewed towards people actually with very good lungs to start with, not sensitive lungs. This kind of idea.
And alcohol and drugs are the same thing, right?
Right.
So people like the booze. If you drink booze and you have the gene, I forgot what it is, alcohol dehydrogenase. If you have lack of that, and for whatever groups of people, I think Asians have, they drink and then they get sick of stink. They're never going to drink.
Correct.
Right. They're so, and when you do steroids as a young man or a girl or a woman, and you get a bad, horrible response, it's actually great for you because you're like, I'm not going down that path. It's the guys that take it, which is most men, and they go, hell yeah. And then the endorphins. This is where you doctors, you need to understand there's a lot of slippery slope isms, and you'll do one cycle. Is one cycle ever going to hurt you? No. But is one cycle going to lead to another and another? Cross this line. Keep coming at me. And then even me, I mean, that's why I'm the leading, I'm the doc. They happen to me. And then by the time after 8 years or so, 5 or 8, maybe 10 years, I was shut down and I had to be on testosterone for the rest of my life in my late, 20s. And now I'm 60.
So I have a question to follow up to that. this might be anecdotal, but what is the least amount of time that you can take exogenous testosterone and sort of permanently impact your own production?
Wow, we don't know, but it's a spectrum. Some men keep repeatedly take steroids, and there's something called post-cycle therapy. We really don't have data on this, which has to change. I'm going to have to do something about this. When you do steroids, like we said, cycles, 6 or 12 weeks, you're just feeling good. Holy shit, mom, I'm feeling great. Now I got to stop. Come on. So they stop. And then back in the day, they would just stop and they would just suck it up and just train harder and kind of white knuckle it and then hold what they have. Hopefully the sex comes back, or maybe in the beginning they don't feel much because they're young, because everything comes back. Now they realize back in the 70s and 80s into the 90s more, where if we use some fertility medications, we could hasten that comeback and to natural. We could bring back the natural production by basically 2 classes of meds. Selective estrogen receptor modulators, so it's hard for me to pack all this in. It's tamoxifen and clomiphene and N-clomiphene citrate, all fertility medicines, and another drug, alpha analog of luteinizing hormone. It's called human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG. There's HMG, which is FSH analog. These are fertility urology drugs and endocrinology, fertility, and so we've utilized these for decades to drive the brain back and to drive the testicles back. Boom. Did you know that?
Well, so I'd seen them used, but is this considered a legitimate use of these drugs? And by
Yes,
mean
yeah.
legitimate,
Well,
if any urologist were to see someone post PED testosterone, would they use these drugs to
yeah,
sort of help them recover? Yeah.
yes, we
Okay.
have data. Yes, but we don't have enough data. And there's so many young men on steroids, and some of them, despite using clomiphene citrate, they feel terrible, or it doesn't work. Or when you're on these drugs, yeah, if you look at the numbers on paper, testosterone's 1,000, 700, you feel great. And then sooner or later, you have to stop the drugs, don't you? And then after it all washes away, so urology doctors and endocrinology doctors, this is my history. I was like, these men are coming to me, they're broken, they want to get off steroids, they're in a withdrawal period. Sometimes after 2 years later, their testosterone is shut down. It's called anabolic steroid induced hypogonadism. I mean, that's my book, America on Steroids. Where is it? Right here. Because I wrote that about that. Right. So this is what it is. And I realized there was so little attention on it 20 years ago. And now here we are. And so
what is the shortest time? Again, this is anecdotal, but in your practice, what's the shortest time you've seen someone use exogenous testosterone and actually have sort of a prolonged problem with their own testosterone production thereafter?
believe it or not, I've seen rare cases where guys have done even 1 or 2 pills and they're blown out. I think I never want to be disrespectful, but I think when you see things like that, and those are quite very, very rare, that there's more psychological, there's psychiatric disease playing a role.
Okay.
I mean, but however, it's a spectrum. But I think most men, when they're young, and you're talking, if you're 45 and you start playing with steroids, you're not going to bounce back, because a 45-year-old won't bounce back as fast as a 25-year-old. That's just common. If you bounce off your bike, if you fall off a bike at 18 versus 80, who's going to get? I mean, this is like extreme. It's like, so we're just it's called health reserve. So the shortest amount would probably be the old school, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe a little bit more, with some Anavar, testosterone, and then you either use the post-cycle therapy or you come off, and then you have to give it time. But what happens is your gains are never going to be as great. You're going to lose. Most people will say you're going to lose everything. But if you have good genetics and you've trained hard and you've gained natural muscle, you're going to keep some of it. But are you going to look like a pro bodybuilder when you're off everything? Look at the pro bodybuilders when they come off; they're cachectic and they look horrible because there's so much neurology going on, damage to the extreme nature of the skeletal muscle. This is my industry here that I'm part of here as an internist spans through cardiology, endocrinology, hematology, and neuromuscular pathology because there's damage to the skeletal muscle by anabolic steroids because it grows it's just too, and then tendons are tearing. We all know that anabolic steroids lead to tendon ruptures because your muscles are so strong the attachments can't take it.
Right.
Well, I've torn everything, pec tears, bicep, hamstring, because I'm a steroid guy and I'm pushing and pushing but my muscle belly is so strong, but too strong for the tendons. I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. Also, orthopedics is in here too, right? So, and some of these steroids actually can, if you use them properly, like decadorablin and Anavar in recovery, post therapy and post surgery can recover, but there's this edge of using too much, like statins, a little bit too much. So it's just a medical thing. So to answer your question, it's a fingerprint thing. Some men can appear to bounce back because they're like, hey man, they're just monsters and they're just super resilient. And then other men on a spectrum are just very fragile and very sensitive. You've seen patients that they take one statin and they're done. Is that really, is it really real? We're not going to make fun of that. But the average person, when they're on long-term statins and they've used it for high doses like Lipitor 80 and they're like frozen, you can't argue. So, but there's a big spectrum in that, doctor, and you know that. So anabolic steroids, these are multiple sundry drugs. There's multiple types. They're using them and then they want to come off back in the 70s and 80s and they want to come off. Now we have blasting and cruising. So let's move it to the next level. Blast and cruise have you heard of that term?
No, never heard.
Okay. So because you don't, sooner or later after you do cycles, you realized, shit, I'm not coming back. I don't feel good. So what does the brother say? This is back in the night. What does the brother say? Hey, dude, just, we're all on. This is going to stay on testosterone. So you cruise to the next blast.
Okay.
This is what men do. So they cruise on testosterone, but usually not TRT, a little bit more. TRT, say for me, is 100 milligrams every 5 days of cypionate, right? My doctor gives it to me. These guys will cruise on, maybe 200, double. But even 400, they're like, how much are you on, sir? I'll ask them. Oh, I'm on TRT. Okay, what's your dose? Oh, 400 a week. And even 200 a week is mostly too much for most guys, depending on the genetic. So, but they're on it, and how are they feeling?
Great, I'm sure. Yeah.
They feel great. And they're young, and they're like, fuck, mom. Who cares about my hair and my bitch tits and my acne and my heart? Because I'm 28. So these are beasts. And again, these are men that, and it's changing now, these are men back in the day that have high tolerance for risk-taking, okay? This is, and my field is also psychiatric medicine, because you have men that take risks inherently because of built-in testosterone, guys, right, that are jumping off of bridges into 60-foot, right? So fast cars, right? So men young die from trauma because why? Risk-taking. And that's because of inherent testosterone compared to women. There's some badass women. I love them. They're badass. But typically men are 10 times more because we're not the brightest bulbs in the tree and we're on testosterone. We're built to kind of have sex and fight. We're kind of built that way and take risks. And now imagine what happens to risk-taking when you start adding androgens. So
And by the way, I have to just add the point there, which you talk about a lot and is so important. That's also why understanding what the actual risk is so important. And there's not really great data with so many of these substances to quantify the risk so that people can make that calculation. There's
wow.
a lot of bro science that's like, it's fine and everyone's fine, which it isn't, because that's anecdotal. There's also the other end of the spectrum, which is the medical, oh well, it's all going to kill you. And let's be fair, that's not accurate either.
Right.
But the true data for risk evaluation is I think lacking and unknown to a good degree, right?
Looks like you and I have some studies to do, Dr. Nolan.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I
Going to
agree.
get you out of the cardiac lab yet. So, but this is, thank you. So this is brilliant. So let's keep going. So the beginning is the basic steroids, then 1990 hits and it's illegal or controlled, and doctors drop it pretty much like a hot potato. And then it becomes polarized, but it continues underground. And this is where where you look for steroids versus drugs and harm reduction, where I'm very progressive, and I know you are too, that it's like, okay, let's look at the data. How do we, booze was illegal. They made it legal. It still kills people in accidents and alcoholism and death. But is it better? Smoking is legal, which I think is crazy, but because people have the right to do it, quote unquote, but it's got all the banned, smoking on the side of the pack. It's going to kill you. It's going to cause heart disease. People still do. So steroids have to sooner or later come into play in that. If you're really, it is true, if you're a really healthy guy, you don't smoke, you don't drink, you like to do a little bit of steroids and watch your ABCDs, I don't understand how, and I don't think any good doctor is going to argue. It's like, that's what they're doing, and you can live. Look at me. I'm not on steroids anymore, but I'm 60, but I've regressed heart disease. So it's like, I'm showing that you could do it. But I'm not on steroids anymore, but I did steroids. And because of my steroid use, it could have hurt my heart. And it definitely shut down my pituitary gland and my testicles. And I'm the doctor saying, guys, be careful. If you don't want to go down this path, I'm going to show you a crystal ball of what's going to happen. Right.
Well,
So,
and I'd like to throw in something there as well. The acknowledgement that people are different, right? So you don't know. I've met these people all the time who've smoking diabetics, and they happen to have minimal heart disease because they're of a different genetic kind than the person I see directly afterwards, who's tried to live a very healthy life and has rip-roaring plaque because they have vulnerable genetics, right? So just to throw in with what you were saying there, that isn't true for everyone. It's true for some, but not true for everyone. And distinguishing what kind of person you are is extremely important, right? With whatever tools we have.
Brett, this is better than I thought it would be, right? I thought you'd be a student sitting there quietly, which is so good. This is so good. So you're giving the feedback that an intelligent physician is asking, because it's not going to go away, and it doesn't make sense, like you said, to the extremes. Stop doing it, sir. You're killing yourself. You're going to get prostate cancer and all. You're doctor. Now you're embarrassing yourself because there's no data, or the data is limited.
Right.
So what the truth is, I want people to understand, young men on my channel, to understand educational perspective, that this is the science behind it. The 3 classes of drugs. Here's how it works in the brain. Here's how the heart works, the endothelial tissue, the kidney. And I've seen all this. And somewhere along the way, based on a multitude of factors and your genes, fingerprint, you're going to get hurt. Here's the way how to mitigate that. Number 1, don't even start taking this stuff. Number 1. And then it's a spectrum. Take less. And just do, if you just want to be on testosterone and you're a 45-year-old guy, who needs it and it feels great for your sex and of course a little muscle building. Hey man, and it burns fat, and you could manage it with doctors like you and ABCD, A1C, blood pressure, cholesterol, cardiac D, deposition, watch the red blood cells, and then S is screening for heart disease and colorectal cancer, skin disease, and mental health. ABCDs. Did I miss anything? I mean, that's a lot of work, and you're going to have to you're going to have to make this yourself. That's why I made my app. But the truth is, we're going to a modern time where we have agents, not to mention tons of pharmaceutical agents that can protect people. But we have these agents that are also there, and they do work. But with every action, there's an equal and opposite react, and that's you and I are science guys. So okay, right. So the next level is the 90s. The drugs are now kind of pushed underground, but however, it shows you that it didn't work. Right, it explodes. In part because of this stuff coming into play. So computers. So same drugs, but more. And then you got guys like, I'm not against this guy, and I think it's Dorian Yates, I'm going to be honest. So if you look at the guys in the 90s, they're bigger and heavier and more freakish than ever, and it just continues. Bigger, faster, stronger. So here's what they're on. They're on the same damn drugs, even to today. We're going to get up to that. They're using more of the drug. So therefore, on the skeletal muscle, more does work. Even super physiologic.
Okay.
And then, but they're mixing the drugs. It's called stacking. They'll put test, Deca, Equipoise, Tren. They'll run them during the week. That's the gurus and the coaches telling them you'll get different effects. Big and strong, puffy, water weight, strength versus being lean and ripped. DHT-derived drugs, they don't aromatize. This is where it gets heavy-duty science. They're not. Testosterone aromatizes. Boom, to estrogen, you get big and puffy. You can feel terrible. A drug like Tren does not. What's that dry, gnarly, really dry, hard look? And that's where these men start learning how to. You didn't know that. You didn't know Tren is a hardening drug. And testosterone, no one knows. When they're competing, basically back in the day, they'd stop testosterone and transition over to drugs because they don't want water. They want to be ripped, and they start using diuretics. We're going to get into this stuff. It's really sad. So, and this is the polypharmacy, brother. Polypharmacy doctor that's coming into play. All drugs, though, are drugs. They're all medical drugs, right? So doctors just don't know them because they're not utilized and they've been banned. And the manufacturers stopped making them because of these. I mean, you can look at Dynabol. So it was a real drug. It was a real drug. It was in America. Then in the 1990s, and you could see the history. So same drugs, more drugs, Tren, now veterinarian drugs. And guys, don't hammer me that, no, they were used in the 70s. All right. Arnold really used testosterone, Dynabol, and Primobolan. Sorry, Arnold, you said it yourself. And he says he used baby doses, but it's doubtful, but that's Arnold.
Baby elephant doses, right.
Baby elephant. Right. I mean, come on, guys. We're not stupid. I mean, it's where these guys say stuff, the fake natties and like a partial fake natty. And it's humiliating to us because you're thinking we're stupid. And these smart guys like Arnold and stuff in his old age now, in his last quarter, hopefully he'll live hopefully to 100. Of course, I want the guy to live forever. He's an icon. But it's like, would you come fucking clean, sir? God damn it. Don't tell us you took one Dynabol a week and 100 milligrams of testosterone. That pisses people off. Okay. Right. So because guys like me, we know it's bullshit. Okay. So the fake natties are going to circle the drain. Look at the Liver King. I don't know if you know about that guy, but
I do know that story.
Some other guy blew him out, blew him in, and the guys just circled the drain.
Look, as someone that's completely unknowledgeable about this world, I looked at pictures of that guy and went, why is there even a debate? Come on.
Right.
There's no
but there's always that he's the one out of a million. And didn't you know that comes from his training and his discipline, which is important. And it comes from his supplements that, of course, you buy. And
Yes.
what I think is criminal about that for all these fake natties, it hurts young men because
Sure.
young men are naive, young boys, teenagers and young men, and they
Right.
say, "Oh boy, I'm going to buy that. How come I don't look that way?" And you know
Sure.
what? I've seen depression and suicide over that. So you know what? Pay attention, you fucking fake natty, because I'm not a politically correct guy. So it hurts people when you lie. But
Yeah.
then again, you have your business and The Rock and all these guys in Hollywood. They have to. No, I'm natty. It's like, but we all know they're not. So what is this paradox?
Sure.
It's just it's bread and circus. Okay, this is part of the education for you, doctor. So same dose in the 90s. Now you ready for this? Strap in. Insulin. Did you know that?
I'm well aware insulin is used a lot. I mean, I know it's a very anabolic. I mean, the most anabolic hormone, uh, but I mean, I don't know where it slots into where people select it or when or
It's
why.
we're not going to go into that. I could talk for another 3 hours, and this is in the 90s. That's that when you see the 90s, you have insulin coming into play, you have a lot more calories, you have a lot more steroids, and then you have starting off, and I don't know the exact dates, guys, please give some comments, growth hormone. Right. Now, growth hormone by itself is really probably not that anabolic, but of course, you take enough of it, it can be. So don't hate me, guys. But when you add tons of steroids, tons of calories, insulin, growth hormone, and then they even have IGF. Growth hormone increases IGF. Okay, it's a growth. It's obviously that is anabolic in recovery. Okay, but they actually have in acrylics. I forgot the name of. They actually have, you can buy IGF and it's super expensive, but these top pro guys are sponsored. That's what you're looking at. And then so let's go into today. And then the coaches open up now in the 90s. So more and more and more, remember now getting up towards 2000, over year 2000, 20 years ago or something, you got this stuff coming up in Facebook and Marketplace and not Instagram, but YouTube and this stuff, but Facebook, it's coming, and then phones, right? So they're texting. There's just a smaller world, and everyone's sharing more information. Now, let's go up to today. Oh, so today, all the drugs are still on board. The same drugs, still the top players. Doctor, top players, Dianabol, testosterone. Everyone's going to be on testosterone, blasting and cruising. So when they come to see you, they have to be on some base of testosterone. Right? You see that even when patients I send you, I have to give them a base of testosterone forever to protect them.
Right.
But the base of testosterone that I give is going to be probably 25% of what they've been on, half, or maybe sometimes 10% of what. I'm not kidding. So testosterone. Now we have strap in, doctor. Trend is out there. We have blasting and cruising like no other. They can't come off because now they've done so many cycles, and there are some they're like little guys. There's some light guys that I call church mouses that really do the research and they do the stuff from the 70s and they go on and off and they can do pretty good. I'm off, but sooner or later, they're just going to be on testosterone. So even they blast and cruise. But the blast and cruise perspective, Dr. Nolan, is a spectrum. Some guys do a little bit, and some guys are the massive pros in bodybuilding, strongmen. Bodybuilders are unfortunately very aggressive with multiple drugs. Here are the drugs they use. You need to know this. It's extreme, and I'm not disparaging them. These are warriors, and they know the risks in theory, but they're like they want to hope that they're going to get through it, and I'm going to stop next year. Now, this is where I've taken care of these men and I've had them right in my office. And then when their heart's destroyed or they're in dialysis, you just see tears of depression and suicide thoughts, at least. And I've seen suicide because that muscle, not only are they not going to be muscular and like they are anymore, they're going to be super cachectic and they're going to look worse than they've ever looked. And if you're 40 or 45, you're in dialysis, you're like, oh, what did I do? But it doesn't happen overnight. It does, and there's genetics. This is where it's like not every guy goes into dialysis. Why does some guy? I have a million videos on this. If you have genetics, right, for focal segmental glomerular sclerosis. I mean, you know me. I'm a little cardiology.
Mhm,
I'm a
mhm.
little hematology,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
I'm a lot renal. I'm a lot, nephrology. Those are my big
Okay.
three. I have to. I have to. So, you understand the kid, the heart. I call it cardiorenal.
Yeah.
Cardiorenal is no joke, and I know you know what that is. So that you're living with forces that are increasing blood pressure, destroying endothelial hypercoagulable. This is my stuff and your stuff right there. So meant you don't even want to know these drugs, extreme drugs, meant blasting and cruising, insulin, growth, on, off, polypharmacy, SARMs. So then these young kids think there's all these drugs called SARMs that are kind of gray, not really illegal because they're not even classified as drugs. So they're being sold as we speak all over the country because you buy it for your lab rat. Wink, wink. It says this is not for human consumption, but you buy. Go to peptides. These are called peptide sites. Did you know this, doctor?
So someone actually referenced peptides the other day for me, and I didn't know enough about it to make any comment, actually.
You need to know. So this is now a world where these are out there in the marketplace. We're not going to stop it. And I'm a libertarian, right? So I mean, I think people need to understand it. Well, I mean, there's a point where fentanyl, heroin, and I don't think that should be legal. I mean, that I don't want my kid to think it's ever going to be, because you do it twice or once, you're done. Steroids are not this way. There's no way. There's some similarities, but I'm the boss on this and the expert doctor in the fucking world for 20 years. When doctors that are clueless start to put steroid users in heroin baskets,
Mm,
it's just so ignorant. And that's
yeah.
why people are disenfranchised from doctors. Thank you for coming forth. And
Mm,
and how can you learn this? I've been doing this for decades, and I could. It's hard for me to explain this to you. Okay,
sure.
so polypharmacy, SARMs, peptides, uh, TB 500, BPC 157, Secretagogues. Bro, do you understand this, sir? You have to just take when you listen to this video, you're just going to research them all. Now. Here's the sad piece of bodybuilders: Lasix, potassium sparing, spironolactone you use for people that are in heart failure.
Sure.
These are people, bodybuilders and gurus taking aldacticide. I know you know what that is.
Hmm.
They use combinations and permutations of of drugs, fat burners. You ever hear of DNP? I'm going to wrap up now.
I've
DNP.
heard this one from you. This I mean, basically TNT for your metabolism,
Right,
right?
right. Oh my God, Brett. So fat burn, clenbuterol. You ever hear of clenbuterol? It's
Yeah,
legal outside America.
yeah, and that's a fat burning drug, right? So
It's
how does
for
that work?
asthma. Remember albuterol, clenbuterol? It
Oh,
sounds the
okay.
same. It's
Gotcha,
it's
gotcha.
a it's a it's a
Beta
beta
agonist.
adren. I'm just trying to pull out of my brain
Yeah.
here. It's a beta adrenergic agonist, but it's for asthma. But it has
Okay.
incredible properties of fat burning, and it's anabolic to some degree.
Interesting. Okay. Got it.
So when I was in my PhD years, I was actually in New York Medical College. I was studying one of the scientists I was I was I was like, the tech student, the grad student. Found that he was doing studies on bovine hearts with clenbuterol.
Interesting.
And of course, I took some of the clenbuterol and I dosed it wrong. And I went to my class that night, and my heart rate was 180. I was 22 years old. My heart rate was literally. This is true. I
And you've
wasn't so
never
good at.
breathed better.
I took out the clenbuterol, and I found clenbuterol, and he had all these studies. We had to titrate all the stuff, and I was like, wow, clenbuterol. This is 1992 or 93. And I did my calculations on the wax paper, and I put my little baby bit, and I weighed it out, and I thought I had the right. I wasn't going on the internet. or maybe I was, I don't know what if the internet was around 19, and I literally took it and I went to class. Like I was like, oh, I'm going to try a little of this stuff. And I sat there in the front of biochemistry, and my heart rate was, I went to my car. Thank you so much. I'm going to check out tonight. Thank you. I went to my car just waiting for it to go away. When am I going to the emergency room?
Wow. Good
Yeah.
times.
The good times. So, but this is why I guess why I'm the anabolic doc, and it's the part of I was just myself. I wanted to just take all this. I mean, I just love being Jack. I'll take anything like a lab rat. I mean, to be now it's out there now. But I'm very fortunate that I've gotten through it. So there's some grace of God there too. No kidding. There's just some good luck there. And I'm kind of like a cockroach too, obviously, that I was able to tolerate it, to some degree. So there's thiazide, there's loop diuretics, there's clenbuterol, there's conditions called anabolic steroid-induced hypogonadism, there's massive polypharmacy, and then the risk factors, doctor, I have them broken down, my ABCDs. Not A, because A is not going to be diabetic. If anything, it's good for A, because it's going to burn fat and build muscle, but it's going to be toxic for the heart. Endothelial, which is your world, when you have taught me on this, thank you. So blood pressure on and off steroids is going to be atrocious, depending on your atrocious. And then it's just all gambling, for it's silent gambling. And then that's blood pressure. Then there's C, it's cholesterol, cardiac, calcium score, endothelial. Then the D is very, that B and C are just so sad. And then the B and C also lead to the cardiac and the renal. Now, you know this because I've sent you so many patients that have cardiac disease and some kidney disease. And then you have to work with nephrology doctors, and with me and the three of us, all of us, I work all over the world. But it's the last part that's very esoteric for doctors that don't even hematologists and even endocrinologists are the best. They don't really understand this, because when they're looking at that, they say polycythemia. They've taken an overlay what looks like polycythemia vera, which is really a blood malignancy for someone who's older, 60. The average age is 60. And then they're imparting that risk, which is inappropriate from studies, because there are none, onto androgen-induced erythrocytosis, because you're only looking at the red blood cells. Anabolic steroids, they don't affect the platelet line. They don't affect the white blood cell line. However, with polycythemia vera, you're going to get the red cell line, the most common, but you're also going to have platelets affected and the white blood cells. That's why in the end it can turn into a true leukemia. And you could fact check all of that. I know you probably know this stuff, but you're not a hematologist.
No,
Right.
but that's good to know that they derived that data from something else. So those cutoffs of hemoglobin hematocrit are actually not driven by testosterone data.
No,
Actually, it's
no.
interesting.
No.
Fascinating.
So I did a video called Thick Blood on the YouTube channel in the last month. You may want to watch Thick Blood.
Sure.
And that's it, doctor. Anything, this went longer than I thought, but it's going to be important.
Yeah.
Did you
Well, I
learn?
mean,
Did you learn?
I have 1,000 questions, but I mean, this was an excellent overview, and frankly, this was exactly what I was looking for, because again, some of the names of what people are using, sort of the manner in which people are approaching them and using them. I mean, again, this is the stuff that's very hard to get. Sources that you can access this from are already very technical and for people using, and sort of beyond what I can sort of access, or it's very naysay, broad 1,000-yard overview. All of this is terrible, and you shouldn't do it. It's the same approach as other illegal drugs. It's like you can't tackle the problem if you don't know the problem, acknowledge it, and acknowledge people are going to do it anyway, right? It's pragmatically, you can't ignore it. So this has been very helpful.
Doctors need to really understand this stuff, that it's not going
Sure.
away. And if they're angry about it, maybe they should just not just disavow from it then, but transition it to another caregiver.
Yeah.
But it's going to be here. Imagine 50 years from now, 20 years from now. I mean, men, I think, unfortunately, are going to be like, yeah, you start testosterone at 25. Of course you do, or younger.
Right.
I mean, it's the only way to do it is education. It's just
Right.
you don't tell, don't do that, young man. What does that young man or young woman do?
Right.
They just do more.
Correct.
Thank you. I'm going to do it. And it's
Right.
just that, especially when you're young. I mean, it's the nature of a strong spirit, of a strong developing, of a strong
Right.
human being to be autonomous. You don't tell me what to do, So it's like it's that youth. It's youth. So, but it's potentially
Right.
very dangerous,
Yeah.
And but I never want to wrap it in any false. I want all as much science as we can. That's why I've been doing this for so long. So.
Sure.
That's it, Dr. Nolan. Thank you so much. We're going to have to
Hey,
get
thank
back
you.
to
Yeah.
some other cardiac medicine in the future. Thank you. Thank you so much,
100%.
Doctor.
Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate this.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan.
All right. Speak to you soon.